President, you may be seated. The court is now back in session. I notice the defense counsel is on his feet. You may proceed. Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Your Honors. Good afternoon, everyone. My apology for my interruption. I have an observation for this morning regarding the interpretation from Khmer into English, and that mistake is kind of substantial. The witness stated that the main enemy was the enemies against ourselves, that we shall eliminate such enemy. But in the English translation, it rendered as to eliminate anyone who has the enemy kind of substance inside. The witness stated that each shall eliminate the enemy within, or the internal enemy against oneself. And I'd like to bring that discrepancy to your attention. Thank you. Thank you. As the French and the English languages are the channels of the interpretation from the Khmer channel, we all were clear this morning that the enemy that the witness referred to is regarded as the enemy against oneself, or the internal enemy against oneself. So we shall review the transcript, and we can see that kind of discrepancy. For now, the floor is given again to the prosecution to put question to the witness.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. President, Your Honors. Before the lunch adjournment, we were speaking about the introspection and self-criticism and criticism sessions. And you mentioned the fact that you were often criticized for various reasons, including your education as well as your marriage with a foreign woman, and was repeated criticism against a member of the party liable to generate sanctions or generate a specific form of monitoring or investigation. Did this ever happen?
No. The criticism issue was not about the wrongful act against the party's line or the policy at the time.
President, I wish now to show to the witness another document that he gave himself to the investigating judge. It is a draft of his book called The Odyssey of a Khmer Rouge Intellectual, and it's indexed E3/40 and IS 3.9. And the excerpt in question, and that I wish to display on the screen, is on the Khmer page 00583-628, French 00079-025-26, English 00981, corrects the interpreter, 3097. So I have a question to put to the witness, and we have a French version of this document written by him directly, and we also have a Khmer translation. So I don't know which copy he wishes to see, the original French version or the Khmer translation.
The President, if you have both copies, you can probably deliver the French version to the witness. Court officer, could you assist in delivering the document from the prosecution for the witness view?
Et peut-être pour être complet, Monsieur.
And maybe to let you fully know, we're not speaking about the final version that you gave to the investigating judges, but we're speaking about a version that's a bit older. So maybe you could tell us if this is a version of this manuscript entitled The Odyssey of a Khmer Rouge Intellectual, and whether this manuscript is the finalized version.
The document I have in my hand is my draft. As indicated that I did this in 2003, as I was a candidate member for my doctoral study, that I had to write 40 pages of the thesis.
Thank you, witness. So I would like you to look at page 40 and 41 in the French version, ERN 00079 025 to 026. But in your pagination, it is page 40 and 41 on the top of the page.
Alors,
So you are speaking about the introspection meetings and the fact that you were criticized for various reasons. And at the end of page 40 begins the excerpt that I wish to read to you. And you say the following: "We were living in the fear of doing wrong. Any form of negligence or absent-mindedness in the fulfillment of our task could be very serious because it could be interpreted at any moment as an act of sabotage and of treason. Living in such an atmosphere was unbearable. I had the impression that my Western education and my marriage with a foreign woman was a handicap that could not be surpassed.
The President, the International Council for Khieu Samphan, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon to all of you. I apologize for interrupting the prosecutor, but I have an objection, yes. We agree that the document that is used is a document that the Chamber ruled on, in which the Chamber indicated the specific segments that may be used by the prosecutor for his examination of Mr. Song Sikun. But however, it does not appear to me that the pages that were read out by the prosecutor are part of the segments that were authorized to be referred to by the Chamber. So I simply wanted to object in that regard to make sure that there are no problems. President, if I may respond. Yes, I would like to respond to this objection. And I believe that the Council is mixing up two documents. This document has been admitted a long time ago by the Chamber under E3/40. And what we are referring to is the placing of the totality of the witness's full manuscript. And it is... And the Chamber ruled on this full manuscript, 300 pages long. So the document that I'm using is a document that has already been placed before the Chamber. Thank you.
The objection is not sustained. The prosecution, you may continue.
Thank you, President. So I read out this excerpt of your manuscript, witness. And these criticism and self-criticism sessions, didn't they generate a climate of fear and of paranoia? Didn't it lead people to denounce each other?
No. Since the attendees, most of the attendees were in the same situation, we were all educated in the West. And some of us also hate foreign wives. In addition, we fulfilled our duties under the leadership of Mr. Ingsari, who also studied in France. So he was not that strict in this sense, because he knew every one of us clearly.
Now I would like to turn to another chapter. And what did you know about the standing and central committees of the party between 1975 and 1979?
I don't know much. I only knew that Ieng Sari was a member of the standing committee of the center, and I did not know about the rest. However, we can all conclude that Pol Pot and Nuon Chea were also in the committee, but I was not sure regarding other people.
And how did you know that Ieng Sari, Pol Pot, and Nuon Chea were part of this committee?
I knew it clearly. The President, the International Council for Noon Chia, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I object to this question as the prosecutor is misstating the testimony of the witness. The witness said that he knows, or at least he just has claimed that he knows that Ieng Sary was member of the standing committee, but he says that he concluded that Pol Pot and Nguyen Chia were part of the standing committee. He has not indicated that he knew this, so maybe the prosecution can rephrase the question.
Therefore, how did you get to know who was part of the standing committee? Did you get this from a direct source, or did you learn this indirectly?
Let's say I knew personally or directly from him, that is from Ieng Sary, who was my direct superior, as he was a permanent member of the standing committee. And within that hierarchy, he was under Pol Pot and Nguyen Chia. For that reason, I made my conclusion that the aforementioned two were also a permanent members of the standing committee.
And as far as you know, or from hearsay, were other people part of this standing committee?
Let me tell you, Mr. Prosecutor, as a member of the party, we knew only what was presented to us by the party. And nobody would be in a position to tell me that person or that individual was a member of the standing committee. In the case of Ieng Sary, I knew it clearly. As in the revolutionary movement and among the intellectuals from France, besides Rod Samund and Kênh Van Sac, he was the old hand revolutionary.
Did you hear, or did anyone tell you, Ieng Sary, for example, of the role of the standing committee within the structure of the CPK?
I do not know. I only knew that he was in charge of foreign affairs of the center. And as for the intellectuals arriving from France, who were the former members of the Marxist-Leninist circle, he was also responsible for that group as well, including myself. I was part of that group. I'd also like to clarify the word responsible or in charge when I made this statement. He was in charge of us, the intellectuals, for the center, that is for Pol Pot. So, Pol Pot also made the decision regarding the appointment for us to go and work here or there. And Ieng Sary was the person who was directly responsible for us in carrying out our duties. As for myself and for other intellectuals from France, these applied all across the board.
And when you're speaking about Pol Pot making decisions, are you referring to decisions he made on his own or collectively, such as stated in the statutes?
As far as I know, it is not difficult to say, because those intellectuals from France were the communists whom he knew individually. So I believe he did not have to ask anyone when making a decision. He could do it by himself.
I apologize. I wish to reformulate the question. You said that Pol Pot was making decisions. And were these decisions that he took on his own? Or, if pursuant to Article 6 of the statutes of the CPK, did he take these decisions on a collective basis?
The President, Mr. Witness, wait. Michael Canavas, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon to everyone in and around the courtroom. If the gentleman wishes to ask questions concerning what the collective may have done, perhaps he can first ask the witness whether he is aware of any collective meetings and whether he attended those collective meetings. Otherwise, he's asking the gentleman to speculate as to what Pol Pot was doing. Thank you.
President, it is the witness who spoke about decisions taken by Pol Pot. So I simply wish to know how these decisions were taken. How does he know that these decisions were taken? Thus my question.
The President, the objection and its ground is not valid, therefore not sustained. The witness, please respond to the last question put to you by the prosecutor. Response. I do not know that clearly, but from the way that I lived there, I knew some of the methods of him making a decision. In certain cases, he was making a decision on his own discretion. For instance, in regards to the intellectual communists returning from France. And I knew that clearly because he knew them individually, clearly, so he knew about their political stance. And when it comes to making decisions regarding them, he would make it by himself on his own. But if you ask me in details whether he made a decision regarding other individuals or any individual besides this group, I cannot make a comment or response to that.
Well, I didn't quite understand. You were speaking about Pol Pot in your answer, is that so?
Yes, I refer to Pol Pot in his decision-making process regarding those intellectuals coming from France.
Thank you. you who were working at B1, beyond Yang Sari's trips abroad, would Yang Sari be absent on a regular basis from B1 to meet with other leaders of the party?
Yes, because he was in charge of foreign affairs. He did not stay permanently inside the country as compared to other cadres or leaders.
And hence I was speaking about meetings with other leaders of the CPK. Did he attend many meetings with these leaders? And if such was the case, where?
Mr. President, I'd like the prosecutor to clarify the term leaders. Are you referring to the CPK leaders within B1 or referring to the leaders throughout the country?
No, I was speaking about the entire country, in particular the members of the standing committee you mentioned earlier on.
No, I do not know about that.
And aside from the standing committee, was there a security committee?
Au niveau du centre.
At the level of the center, once again.
I do not know about the clear organization of the center. I did not know whether there was a security committee.
Monsieur le
President, I wish now to show to the witness two documents. The first is his second statement before the OCIJ, and it is referred D91/26. There's no E3 reference yet. And this in French is on page 5, in French on page 00204153, and in English 00223642. This is the first document which I would like to display on the screen.
Yes, you may proceed. Court officer, could you deliver the document from the prosecutor for the witness to examine?
Alors, voilà la citation.
So here is the quote. As far as I'm aware, the Security Committee of the party was composed of Pol Pot, Nunchia and Son Sen. End of quote.
Et je voudrais, dans la foulée,
And now I'd like to show a second document, which I've already given the witness. It's E3/42, or D167, and in Khmer page 0032, 7208, in English 0032, 7218, and in French page 7.
Et si on pouvait
And if those latter responses could also be put up on the screen, Mr. President, I would be grateful.
Yes, you may proceed.
Alors, voilà.
Here's your second response, Mr. Witness, and I quote, "The Security Committee was composed of Pol Pot, Nunchia, Son Sen, and then after the letters moved to the east, Won Wet, until his arrest." End of quote. So, Mr. Witness, what was the function of the Security Committee?
That I do not know. And concerning the composition of this committee, when I was there, I did not know. I only learned about it later in late 1979.
Qui vous a appris?
And in 1979, who told you about the composition of the Security Committee?
I do not recall, but it could have been from the news article and some book which also indicate about this composition of the committee. But if you ask me to identify any particular book or article, I cannot recall.
Est-ce que vous avez...
Between 1975 and 1979, did you ever hear a reference to Office 870?
I heard of Office 870. I did hear about it because certain communication we had to do it through Pong, because Pong was in charge of Office 870. In a certain period, I did not recall the exact date, but he at one time took me by motorbike from his place and Pol Pot's office to back to Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That was all I knew, that Pong was in charge of Office 870, and he was someone who was attached and responsible for that office.
Et où se trouvait...
Where was the office? Where did you go when he took you on that motorbike? Did the office have a name?
Actually, it was not from any office, but it was a place where they receive guests. But I cannot recall the exact place. It could have been the B2 office or the government palace. And currently it is the former house of the French governor along the riverfront, and at that time he took me from that place back to the ministry.
Et à quel endroit?
Where was Pol Pot working at the time? Do you know that?
That I do not know.
Est-ce que dans...
As part of your duties, and more particularly the job of interpreting, Did you go to some offices or certain places where leaders like Pol Pot, Khieu Samphan, Nun Chea, and so forth were? And can you describe these places?
I went to interpret for Pol Pot in the house I mentioned earlier. It was situated along the riverfront. During the Sangkum Risniyum era, it was called the government palace, and during the French administration, it was known as the residence of the governor, the French governor. And Pol Pot worked in that office, and I interpreted for him over there when he received the female Vietnamese delegates sometime in early 1977. That is all I knew about this place, and as for other offices that Pol Pot worked, I did not know.
Apart from Pang, who also belonged to Office 870.
That I do not know either. And I would like to emphasize that at that time, I did not know.
You said that Bang dropped you off at the Foreign Ministry by motorbike. Did he often come to the Foreign Ministry? Did you see him on other occasions?
No, I never saw him again. I only saw him once.
During the Democratic Cambodia period, did you often meet Mr. Khieu Samphan, and if so, in what kind of settings?
I was the French interpreter for the leaders. So in his capacity as the president of the state presidiums, he received credential of foreign diplomats who have their mission in Cambodia during the Democratic Cambodia period.
Apart from your official duties as a French interpreter, outside that, did you ever talk face-to-face with Khieu Samphan?
Mr. President, I am not clear with this question. Who are you referring to when you are talking about the conversation with Khieu Samphan? Could Mr. Prosecutor clarify it when you are referring to the conversation with Khieu Samphan? President, Co-prosecutor, please repeat your question, because it is likely that the witness does not understand the question.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if outside the strictly professional framework of interpretation, during meetings between Khieu Samphan and other diplomats, did you yourself meet with him and have conversations with him? I'm talking about you yourself.
No, I never talked to him in a private capacity because my meeting with him was only when we had our official function to carry out. And to my recollection, he came to Ministry of Foreign Affairs and I met him over there. But at that time, he instructed me to write 2 articles for news article for publication at that time. But I did not prepare any articles at that time, and I to my recollection, those 2 articles were not run by the news agency at that time.
Est-ce que vous...
Did you go with Kyo Sampan along with Yang Sari and Yang Tirit to Peking during a summer 1975 mission?
From 1975 through 1979, I used to accompany Kyo Samphan to attend the non-aligned summit in Sri Lanka in 1976. That was the only occasion I accompanied him overseas. And at that time, in his capacity as a foreign minister, Mr. Ieng Sari also members of that delegation.
Est-ce que...
Did you have any kind of contact with Nun Chia during the Democratic Kampuchea period?
During the Democratic Kampuchea period, I met him personally once on the phone, and he requested that I prepare an article about Democratic Kampuchea foreign policy. It was the only occasion I talked to him. Actually, I did not meet him face to face, but I once saw him during the party's presentation, but at that time Pol Pot was the presenter and I saw him from the distance.
Quand vous l'avez vu?
And when you saw him from far away and it was Pol Pot giving the speech, was it a political education session, and what place was it held in?
Political session was conducted in Borei Kaila.
Was it exclusively for party members?
Yes, it was meant for the party's cadres, starting from the chairman or the secretary of the district or sectors committee.
Aside from Pol Pot, who spoke at that political education session?
As I said earlier, Pol Pot and Nuon Chea were the speakers in those political education sessions.
And when did you attend these political education sessions?
If my memory serves me well, I attended in 1976, and it could have been sometime in June 1976.
Quels ont été les
What were the political or ideological subjects that were discussed at these sessions by Pol Pot and Nun Chair?
I cannot recall. It took place a long time ago.
Est-ce que l'on parle
Was there talk of the political situation of the country in general? Was there discussion of the situation vis-à-vis the enemies at these meetings, or can you simply not remember?
Precisely, it discussed the evolution of the situation, particularly from the democratic revolution to socialist revolution, as well as the international evolution of the national liberation. And in that times, this movement was springing up around the world.
Est-ce qu'en dehors
Apart from that political education session, did you attend with party members other big annual sessions in the Olympic Stadium, for example, at the official anniversary of the Communist Party?
To my recollection, in 1978, I attended a mass rally congratulating the party's inception anniversary held at the Olympic Stadium.
et à cette occasion
And on that particular occasion, who delivered the address at the Olympic Stadium?
At that time, Pol Pot was the person who addressed the rally.
Did other major leaders of the party attend? For example, non-chair Yang Sarikya Sampan Sonsen Vonvet?
At that time, high-ranking officials of the party were present at that time, but I cannot recall as to who exactly were there.
Do you remember what Pol Pot said in his speech on that particular party anniversary occasion? 30th of September, I imagine.
I can recall it because at that time there was a tension between Democratic Cambodia, which the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, and the tension reached a culmination at that time. And I can still recall it, that Pol Pot flagged out that one combatant of Democratic Cambodia could smash up to 8 Vietnamese combatants. So, in some, even if we kill all the Vietnamese, then there would remain some Cambodians would at least 2 million Cambodians could still survive. But upon hearing that address, I felt goosebumps.
As the head of propaganda and information in B1, you followed what was going on in the country. Can you tell us if Nun Chia often went to the general assemblies that were held in the zones?
That I do not know, because it falls outside the scope of my responsibility.
Vous avez parlé d'un coup de...
You talked about a telephone call that you received from Nun Chia about an article you had drafted. Is this connected in any way with the Black Book on Foreign Policy of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam vis-à-vis Democratic Cambodia?
President, witness, please hold on. We need to hear the objection by the Defense Counsel. Defense Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is now too late, but for the record, I want to object to this form of questioning by the prosecution. Again, the prosecution in the question already formulates the prosecution's theory as to what this phone call was about. The proper way is to simply ask the witness, does he remember what this phone call was about? And then possibly later his memory can be refreshed as to the substance of this conversation. Again, it is now too late. I do not see how we can deal with this matter, but for the future, I think it's important, Mr. President, that you urge the prosecution or order the prosecution to not adopt this line of leading questions where they give the information to the witness in advance.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, in actual fact, this is an aspect that has already been covered by the witness in one of his hearings, and I don't think it's a leading question because he himself has already spoken on the subject in E3/42, and these are minutes that he has before his own very eyes in page 0032, 7206 to 07, English 0032 7217, and in French 0032 7227. So perhaps now we can hear the witness's answer, or would you rather I read the extract from the minutes, Mr. President?
Yes, Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Everybody here in this courtroom has read the prior statements of this witness. That's not the issue. The issue is how do we question this witness in court? If we want to make this a valuable testimony with probative value, the witness should be asked open questions asking leading questions is simply in violation of your clear instructions as to how we question this witness in court. And I must speak from memory now, but I do not remember this witness speaking about a telephone conversation with Mr. Nguyen Chia on this issue. I think his statement claims that he met Nguyen Chia. So this is a point of interest, and therefore it is important that this witness is asked open questions and not leading questions.
The President, the objection and the grounds for the objection are not valid, so the objection is not sustained. Witness is now instructed to respond to the last question posed by the prosecutor. My conversation on the phone with Mr. Nguyen Chia did not relate to the writing of the black paper of the Democratic Cambodia.
Peut-être.
Perhaps I could read the extract, Mr. President, before asking any other questions on the issue. It does seem to me that in the record a link was drawn between a meeting on the Black Book and Mr. Nguyen Chia's telephone call. So I'd like to read out the passage I did mention in E3/42, which has the reference D167, and if you can look at page 0032, 7206 to 07, it's page 6 in French, and in English 0032, 7217, and if that could be put up on the screen as well, Mr. President, I would be grateful.
Yes, you may proceed.
Alors, je vais citer.
I'm going to quote what you said. This was a question relating, or a question that was formulated in the following way. Did you have the opportunity of meeting Nguyen Chia between 1975 and 1979? Answer, I never had any direct relations with him. I only saw him during a meeting organized in September 1977 for the drafting of the Black Book about the foreign policy of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam towards Democratic Kampuchea. There were a number of representatives of the Foreign Affairs Ministry President Chun Prasit Kechun and myself. We had been summoned by Pol Pot, and he was the one who spoke most. Nguyen Chia was more an observer than an active participant. After the meeting, I remember that Nguyen Chia called me at the end of 1977 to ask me to write an article about the foreign policy of Democratic Kampuchea for the Kampuchea, quote-unquote, newspaper. End of quote. I'm first, therefore, going to speak about the drafting of this Black Book. What were Nunchea's and Ieng Sari's respective roles in the drafting of the Black Book that was published by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
The two did not have anything to do with the publication of the Black Book of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, except in the case that they, as I recall, in fact, as I recall, the Pol Pot called some of the cadres from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I can clearly recall to myself Kitchon, Chun Prasad, and Nikon, who was the chief of protocol back then. And there were also Noon Chi and Ieng Sari present. Pol Pot made the presentation regarding the content, and we were only like minute recorders or recorders of the presentation. That was how it was done. For example, if Kitchon, if you were to say Kitchon wrote a speech, in fact it was not like that. We all would take notes, and then we would combine and draft it of what he said, and make some editing work through it. But we would retain all the main contents, and then we would have it for his review before it is published. So we did not have anything new to add to that. And when he made a presentation regarding Ko Sang Sin, or the current South Vietnam, I myself was not really familiar with that particular topic. He said, Ko, in the Vietnamese language, refers to the ninth daughter of a king. That's how I can only recall. Chun Prasad and Kitchon also discussed that that was not correct based on the creation of the South Vietnam. Ko Sang Sin was a French word referring to the South Vietnam part of the Vietnam country. Vietnam was then split into three. Ko Sang Sin, that's South Vietnam, or Cambodia Crown, and then there was Central Vietnam and North Vietnam. However, after many debates, we decided to retain the word Ko Sang Sin. And my section was responsible for the publication. And Ieng Sari and Noon Chi were not involved in the writing of that book. It was actually Pol Pot who wrote that book. And I can recall that Mr. Saran Chap, who was Minister of Foreign Affairs, who was a minister, was also there, and he saw the Black Book, and he said to me that that Black Book was not really in detail, but I just kept silent. And that's regarding the event surrounding that book.
And if this book was published by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, can we, or do you know if Ieng Sari read this book before it was published?
The President and witness, please wait. Defense Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't object earlier to the question which misstated the facts. Now again, the prosecution is attempting to misstate the facts yet again. I know we're before professional judges. He's claiming that this was published by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This is a claim, an assertion that's made by the prosecution, and he's asking the witness to verify. First of all, it's leading. He can proceed step by step. The gentleman has indicated that Pol Pot more or less dictated it to him and to others, and that's how it came about. Now he wants to have it attributed to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I can understand the gentleman's eagerness to pin this on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but the evidence should come from the witness and not from the prosecution.
Je propose.
Mr. President, may I ask the witness then if it is indeed the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that published this black book? Does the black book have any mention referring to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the cover page?
But as part of the propaganda and information section, I published that book, and it was translated into French and English as well.
So, since you were in charge of the publication of this book was published by the ministry. So does this mean that Ieng Sary, before its publication, read the book to verify its content and its compliance with the conversation that had taken place with Pol Pot?
It seems that it was not necessary, as Mr. Chun Prasad could send it to Pol Pot through Ieng Sary. That is, after Kit Chun and Chun Prasad made it into a book form, then it is possible that the book was sent to Pol Pot directly or sent to him through Ieng Sary. As I said earlier, sometimes Pol Pot made contact with us or our section directly without having to go through Ieng Sary. And let me just give you an example. Mr. Stefan Courtois, who was my professor, said that it was a common practice in various other European countries. If you were the president or the chairman, in fact, you were not that effective. In reality, it was the second man who had the real authority. And the situation was different from the setting in Europe or in some other African countries. The situation in Cambodia was rather distinct from Europe countries or from France. I don't want to wander any further into this area, but sometimes the chairperson himself did not know of what was going on. Even if in my case, I was the chairman of the Propaganda and Information Office, and sometimes news was released with my name, but I myself was not aware of its nature or content. The President, thank you. The time is now appropriate for a short recess. We shall take a break until 3 p.m. Court officer, could you assist the witness and the duty counsel during the recess and have them return at 3 p.m. when we resume?
សូមក្រោកឈរ